Hello and welcome to Business Watch, your show that looks at business issues that matter to you. I'm Joy Kiruki. Now today on Business Watch, we take a look at business courses offered in university and with special focus on Inorero University's Executive Master in Business Administration. To do that with me is Dr. Nils, who is the Inorero University Advisor, and Mr. Ali Hussein, who is a participant in the university. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, now to start us off, what is an executive MBA? I'll ask you, Mr. Nils.
Well, an executive MBA is very different from a classical MBA in our context at Inorero University. In a Kenyan context, I think most executive MBAs look like an ordinary MBA that you do at university to pursue an academic career. It's only the day curriculum that is taught in the evening to address the needs of business people who cannot study full-time. So that's in a way how it is classically in Kenya. The model we are bringing to Kenya through Inorero and the partnership with Copenhagen Business School is a model where we train the business people, qualified business people, directly in their businesses, not to do an academic career, but to improve their professionalism in how they conduct their businesses in terms of business and personal leadership.
Right. And so how different is it from the normal MBA?
So from my understanding and from my experience up to now, and for some of us who looked at different executive MBAs before we made a choice, my attraction to the Inorero program was basically two key issues, the two kind of differences. First one was that personal leadership development program, which focuses on leaders and focuses on you. So yes, you do theory, but the theories are as a direct as a direct response to you as a person and as a leader. The other one, the other aspect was what attracted me is two key areas. The first one was the intercompany assignments. In MBA lingo, we talk about case studies. Mm-hmm. But in this particular case, the case studies, you learn case studies. The normal case studies developed by Harvard Business School, IMD, Stanford and the likes, but here we are developing case studies literally on a live basis. So for my organization, for example, where I'm working right now, I lead a company called 3 Mice Interactive Media.
Right.
We do assignments that are as a direct result of the issues that we are facing on a day-to-day basis as 3 Mice Interactive Media. And my other colleagues have their own companies, so they do assignments that are in direct relation to what they are currently doing in their professional lives. So that's really, for me, that was a real
selling point,
unique selling point, right, for this program.
All right.
Yeah.
And then what particular course is being offered in this particular executive MBA?
Well, we have a structure of 3 modules, and in the first module, which lasts for almost 5 months, we have a kind of the basics of any business study. Mm-hmm. We do business models, we do competitive analysis, we do industry analysis, and these are sort of the basic understanding of how one's business is positioned in the competitive landscape. From that one, we move on to more specifics on marketing, on operational management, finance, and so on and so forth. So when we're through with the basic model or the basic module, module 1, we have a good insight in our own business, or for that matter, government organization, because they can be studied almost in the same language as real businesses. When we're then through with the first module, which we do more or less individually, but in small teams helping each other, we turn to the second module, which is a very different structure. Here we work totally in teams, and each team will be a client or consultancy team for a client. So we identify a Kenyan business which would like our team of participants to help them internationalize their company. That is, take, for instance, we have been working with Longhorn, now a publicly listed company. We have assisted them looking into potential market opportunities in outside of Kenya, and so on and so forth. So each team will work for such a client, and therefore apply all the tools they learned in the first module plus some extra tools to internationalizing that company.
Right. So how long does this course take?
That also takes 5 months.
Right.
So we have now done 10 months more or less, and then we have the last 5 months where in principle you focus again on your own company, your supporting company.
Which is the stage you're at?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
So we are at the last module now, which as Dr. Neil said, takes another 5 months. So in total, you're looking at about 15 months. And this is intense. I think for most of us who are taking this course, what was very attractive is that this course is not just academic. You know, it's a very interesting mix of academic theory and practical application at the same time. So you're not finding yourself kind of struggling with your academics and struggling with your work, but you're actually applying both at the same time at work. That for me was really the most attractive, component of this whole process.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then after your 5 months, with the stage you're at, then what next? Then you graduate, or do
Yes,
you do?
so for us, we are graduating November 17th?
Yes, November 17th.
November
Right.
17th.
So you don't do, like thesis and dissertation?
Well, our thesis and dissertations are the assignments that we do.
Over time,
Yes, over this period. So the first one, we did an intercompany assignment 1, which was basically discussing about what we call business systems in relation to the value proposition of the company. The next stage was a unique one because we went in as consultants for a company that was not necessarily... In this particular case, I was in a group that was looking at a market entry strategy for South Sudan, for Longhorn. And we did that assignment in collaboration with the top management, with the top leadership at Longhorn. And we had the opportunity to then present to their top management. And we are hoping to get an opportunity to then, the next stage is hoping to get an opportunity to present to their board. This process was very interesting for us because most of us, by the way, are senior leaders within our organizations, in both from a private sector, government, and non-governmental, organizations. So that interaction was really, really, really interesting because you put leaders in a group and you're supposed, one of us always has to take
the group dynamics.
The group dynamics are very, very interesting, and it brought to the fore the old adage where people always say, before you can be a good leader, you must know how
be a good follower.
How to be a good follower. So this whole process has been extremely interesting because you're looking at it from an environment that is academic, and at the same time an environment that is very dynamic from a business perspective.
Now, in terms of zeroing in on Longhorn, to go and consult on, are you limited in terms of choice for companies to consult, or do you choose for yourself?
We in program management would select the clients and make sure that they are ready to invest the resources and even contribute to covering the costs of the group when they are traveling and interviewing competitors, suppliers and customers, what have you. So it's a real consultancy assignment. And this leads me to also mentioning that the model we are trying to apply here is the experiential learning. So people will learn through trying it out. That is, partly through the company assignments, but also not least through the personal leadership aspects. So not only do we work intensively in teams where each other person would give feedback to each other and try to solve the conflicts that would normally arise in any team that has a deadline and everybody is busy and cannot meet the deadlines and what have you, but also give feedback from you get feedback from the faculty, of course, from your peers in your organization and from the employees on how you perform as a leader, and you take those inputs as vehicles for developing yourself, so that at the end of the program, hopefully Ali and his colleagues, when they graduate, will emerge wiser in terms of understanding themselves. How do I impact my people? How do I communicate? How do I set direction? How do I solve a conflict? How do I create a team that can create something for the business, and so on and so forth?
Right. So this new this model that you're introducing, are you the part of the first lot that's going through the system, or
we are the second lot?
The second lot.
The guinea pigs already graduated.
Okay.
The real guinea pigs.
Right.
But we have improved, of course, if we can say adjusting a more or less Scandinavian concept to a Kenyan context. That takes a little while to do that in a proper sense.
And I think the other thing is that we are really grateful to the faculty, because one of the things that they have embraced is the fact that they are also there to learn. And that's another difference, I think, with this executive MBA and other MBAs, is that the faculty understands that, you know, there is many years of experience within that
within the class.
Within the class. So, you know, we are participants as opposed to just students.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of sharing. There's a lot of sharing and a lot of discussion points. There are points that, you know, we are allowed to disagree and put in your case and say, look, this is why we think we don't agree with that, you know, concept. I remember doing our first personal leadership development plan, and one of the lecturers encouraged us to look at leadership from an African perspective. You know, we are always bamboozled by Western,
Yes, no, absolutely, substantially.
Western way of thinking as far as leadership is concerned. But we are saying there is another story to be told.
Our story.
Our story. Yeah, the African perspective of leadership. You know, there's always this stereotyping of African leadership. But, you know, there's a story, and we must tell that story. And we must use the global tools of how leadership evolves and how you lead by transforming it to our own perspective. And that's how we have, you know, from my perspective, I have found this extremely useful and practical.
Okay. And in terms of assessing the crop of the first lot,
yes,
the guinea pigs, so to speak,
yes.
How would you rate them in terms of, are they any different now that they're out in the field?
I think one can say safely yes. And I think if you asked or interviewed some of the alumni, which we now call them, definitely yes. And I think the key step to that kind of difference is increased self-insight. What do I know now as a leader about myself? What do I know about my business? Because also to learn what you know and what you don't know is a key thing. Even what you don't know is also a key thing. And they have learned to see the perspectives of how they can develop their business. And that goes for I think all alumni. We have had CEOs from very good companies involved in the first cohort, and I'm sure that even the third cohort, which is now just started in 3-4 months ago, is already also now taking up in that direction.
Okay. And then what are some of the qualifications needed to join this particular executive MBA?
Well, We have two types of qualifications in all sorts of programs. You have the formal requirements and you have the informal ones. And the formal ones is that we normally would go for a bachelor degree as an entrance point or a similar kind of education. And in a Kenyan context, we have been adjusting the entry requirements a little bit because we see that there are very different types of bachelor degrees that you can get here. So that's a formal thing. The informal thing, which in a way is more important seen from our perspective as business leaders, is that the people we get on board have experience, can contribute in class, can go against the faculty when need be, that is, has the maturity to also speak up and take action and take leadership.
How many years of experience is required?
Well, in principle, we would like them to have at least 3 to 4 years, and even some years in management position, be it project leaders or whatever they have been. But of course, we look at the personal aspects very intensively.
Right. And so who is targeted for this program?
Well, I mean, myself, from a perspective, from a profile perspective, you're talking about from middle to senior management. Our class is very interesting in the sense that we have a spectrum of leaders from government. We have one of our colleagues is the head of the government advisory, parastatal advisory, advisory board. Then you have entrepreneurs, venture capitalists within our group. You have lawyers, senior lawyers.
Bankers.
You have bankers. We have consultants.
So it's basically anyone who wants to improve their leadership and effectiveness in leading people.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Yes. So what do you offer? Where is it offered and how is it structured, the course?
Well, you know how often you have to go to Gratia Gardens.
Yes.
We are offering it in Kilimani. And
it's a small boutique, hotel. It's a good environment out of the campus. So you have.
So this particular one is offered in a hotel.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, quite a number of the MBA programs here are offered off campus. It gives a good environment.
And relaxed, without tension.
Yes, unrelaxed environment. How is it offered? One of the things for me was the structure of the timings. Every 2 weeks, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So obviously
that's when you go to class?
Yes.
From what time to what time?
Full day.
The full day, right?
Full day. 8 to 5, and sometimes we go a bit longer because you have group discussions. Then there are tutorials. Where we structure these, and we are glad for the faculty because they allow us to structure this according to our timelines, our times. So usually every other week we have tutorials. Sometimes it's in the afternoons, sometimes it's in the evenings, kind of depending on how we are able to organize ourselves in groups.
I mean, the fact that you're in leadership positions, most of the class, timing is of the essence because many of you travel, you're busy in meetings and all that.
Yes, absolutely. And
how are you able to merge all those times together?
Well, I always say that you find time for the important things in life. If this is important enough, you will structure it according. What's interesting is that some of our most intense discussions, group dynamics and group disagreements have been around how we manage our time.
Okay. And that's in a way a key learning experience. Yeah. How do you prioritize your time and make the best out of the time you have?
Yeah.
We
all have 24 hours in a day, so it's depending on what you do with it.
And I must say it was a shock for me when we did the first cohort because of their concepts of the word deadline.
Yeah.
How did they understand a deadline? Nobody understood the word deadline as literally taken,
Yeah.
Assignments kept creeping in 1 week after, 2 weeks after.
Yes, and this is, this is the other learning process, this stereotyping of Africa and our essence of time, and we have agreed as a group that this is something that, we must ensure that we don't allow to continue in perpetuity. I don't know whether you saw that.
There's no hurry in Africa.
Yes, yeah. I don't know whether you saw that movie, Blood Diamonds, when the new acronym was coined for Africa, TIA. This is Africa, and it's always connotes negativity in terms of how we do things. So we want to have a new TIA. When you're saying this is Africa, you're talking about positive, not negative.
Right.
Yeah.
So in terms of even looking at the faculty, who makes up the faculty?
Well, it's a good mix. I brought quite a few international faculty from various countries from the Scandinavian context, because even when we ran the program for 16 years in Copenhagen before I left, we had faculty from all over the world, and most of that faculty have joined me here in a Kenyan context. So those take up some of the key topics, finance and logistics and what have you. Then on top of this, we have educated local faculty, trained them to take over gradually together with the faculty, but also supporting as facilitators in the personal leadership part. The personal leadership part takes very intensive discussions in small teams. Therefore, 4 or 5 faculty must be present at the same time to take each their team and work with them. So that has to be a locally based activity, which we have then through training of trainers organized. So it's a mix, good mix. In the long run, Kenyan has sublime faculty that can take over this program with a few international hotshots on top of it.
And I think that's also where the strength of this specific executive MBA is, because some of the faculty, the management and experiential gravitas that they bring to the table is absolutely amazing, local and international. Some of the faculty, like Professor Jim Ellett, when he comes to teach us on mergers and acquisitions or financial management, he's bringing to the table not only his 30 plus years of teaching, but actual work that he's done with global companies. He was involved in the restructuring of IBM, as we know it today.
Good case examples.
Absolutely.
Right.
He was involved in the reorganization of Nestle, as we know it today.
So basically then the faculty have to have years of experience, much more than the students themselves.
Yes,
definitely.
absolutely.
Well, I mean,
Absolutely.
participants.
Absolutely.
And the fantastic dialogue appears when experienced business people meet experienced faculty who also have business experience, but theory on top of it, so that you get this interaction of real learning.
It's a very interesting dynamic where you have really strong faculty who also have a strong business experience, and then you have experienced executives who are engaging. So the learning becomes extremely dynamic, and it's a give and take. One of the things that we have challenged the university is we must develop local and African case studies. It's good to have a global perspective. It's good to talk about Nestle case studies, IBM case studies, but we want to see local companies and organizations take up this part of the local aspect of industry and businesses and develop with faculty case studies that can be.
Because I believe the case studies are there.
Exactly.
They're just not
they're not documented from global best practice. and again, we have special guests who come in and talk to us about their experiences. I think the other in the next 2 weeks we have Dr. Kipngetich from KWS coming to talk to us about value-based leadership. We've had other business leaders and political leaders who have come to talk to us.
Right. So what would you say are some of the skill gaps in Kenya that need filling up?
From my humble perspective, this issue, which is now very much in the public domain, is about corporate governance. And I don't think it's an issue of whether organizations have corporate governance tenets already embedded in organizations, but the issue about whether the directors of the board themselves really understand and take corporate governance to heart. Sometimes it's even an issue of directors not really understanding that they are doing something right or wrong. We have had discussions in the last few months about CMC. Some giants in this country, some industry giants have been banned from sitting in any public quoted company board. We have had issues to do with corporate governance, to do with tendering processes. We have had very interesting discussions between government, ministers and permanent secretaries and board of directors. I think the most interesting cases have been the CCK one, where the board has said, no, corporate governance tenets require us.
So this particular course
issues,
is able to address those issues?
Absolutely.
And you're able to understand what corporate governance is all about?
Because it's not only the corporate governance issue, tenets, but it's also about personal leadership.
Exactly. That's where these things interact and combine.
So you, as a Kenyan, as a corporate leader, when you're doing the things that you're doing, what are you telling everybody else? What are the implications? Lawyers will talk about precedents and case law. What are those implications? If you do this, what else can other board members who come in do? I served on the board of Kenya Network Information Center, KENIC, in short, which is the .ke domain administrator in Kenya. And I finished my 2 terms in April, and the supporting organization that I was representing asked me to step down so that somebody else can come in to represent. Now, if you've not contributed positively after 2 terms of 3 years each, what do you think you're going to contribute going forward? Let somebody else come in. Yet there are other board members who've been there since 10 plus years. So corporate governance issues are about, yes, the institutions that you built to ensure that
learning to let go.
And learning to let go. So that's personal leadership.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, which is a very hard thing in Africa, I think.
But this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. That TIA business that we've talked about, we need to change that perspective so that it becomes a positive thing. Africa was not always the negative continent that everybody thinks it was. Africa used to be great. Can we take it back there?
Right. Yeah. Right. Dr. Neil, what are the global trends in executive MBA as we know it?
Well, a good question. The global trends, I think, are in our direction, so to speak. We see increasingly that hands-on experience are sneaking in many programs. Get away from the classical stiff academic tradition, not using the systematics, but or not forgetting the systematics, continue to use theory and tools in practice, but apply them. So that we see in a global trend, at least in the US and in Europe. It's also a trend to put more focus on personal leadership. Now, the key question is, can you train personal leadership without being present? Because a third tendency is to use e-learning, to distance learning. We have chosen a model where we work with people when they are present and give them personal feedback, because personal feedback takes it takes personal feedback to really make a change to yourself. You cannot easily do that via a screen, but distance learning and experiential learning and personal leadership learning are some of the key trends that we see nowadays. And then moving the EMBAs a little bit outside of the classical academic field. But it takes faculty, good faculty, to do it. And if we talked about gaps before, I would say that we have a gap in terms of educating our own faculty, making them think out of the box, leave their safe areas of theory knowledge, let them move into real life, try out something, act as consultants, try to open their horizon, spend more time on research to upgrade their quality in class. And that's a key thing we need to focus on, even in Kenya, I think.
Okay, and then even as we come to the end of this interview, your last words, in terms of leadership for Kenya, you feel like you have a burden for change of heart in terms of leadership, to be able to do away with the notion of the TIA.
Yes.
What would your last words be?
My last word will be is that communal leadership emanates from individuals. If individually we don't take ownership and we don't take responsibility, then how do we build that communal? Personal, from a Christian perspective, a personal crusade to change yourself. From a Muslim perspective, as a Muslim, I will talk about personal jihad, to make sure that you're fighting within yourself first, to do the best that you can, to take responsibility for yourself before you become, a community, because it's myself and yourself and Dr. Niels and a few others who build that community. So it doesn't matter how good a constitution, how good a corporate governance tenets that we have. A human being has a tendency to be able to circumvent the best systems, the best whatever you put. So yes, we must have those ground rules, but then we also must take personal responsibility.
Right. Dr. Neil, looking into the scenario in Kenya, what would it be?
Well, I think we face this major challenge of 2030. Everybody mentions 2030 as the key vision for Kenya. Mm-hmm. But to get there, we need to systematically train our people, educate them at all levels in Kenya. And we have, in this program, focused on the business executives. And we think they play a key role, be they leaders of medium-sized or small or medium-sized or big businesses, to really create the value in Kenya that can take us, give us the money to create the society we want in 2030. Businesses are the value creators, and we need to create more value in this country in terms of manufacturing or service delivery, and not just importing everything. So that's why we are here and why we want to contribute to this learning process.
Right. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you
for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Right, you're
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you.
Right, we've been talking to Dr. Neil, who is the advisor at Inorero University, as well as Mr. Ali Hussein, who is a participant in the Executive MBA. Right, thank you so much for staying with us. We've been talking about the issues of leadership in Africa and the fact that you need to take personal responsibility for your own good and also for the good of the community around you. Thank you so much for staying with us on Business Watch. I'm Joy Kiruki.